Alright guys, Shazar back here for another Destiny character guide today, and before I start anything, I want to say thank you Upgrade Inc. for suggesting the Titan. I know you're having trouble deciding between Sunbreaker and Defender, so I went ahead and chose for you and went Sunbreaker just because it's more diverse, well not necessarily diverse, but it's more versatile and can be used in more situations. So anyways, let's get started off here. Starting off with the grenades, we've got the fusion grenade, the thermite grenade, and last off the incendiary grenade. The reason I went incendiary grenade instead of the other two is because it has a bigger blast radius, and it also allows you to, it also burns enemies within that blast radius. So not only does it have the initial explosion damage, but it also burns over time. So, to me, that was just a huge plus, because it can work good for big groups of ads, it can work good against bosses. It's just an overall good grenade. Now, the other two grenades, the fusion grenade, I'm not going to lie, is pretty good. To me, it seems a little more exclusive towards bosses, though, and that's kind of why I don't like it, because, you know, you stick it to, it sticks to an enemy and then it does more damage upon impact. But, honestly, that's not as versatile, and I like being able to have it fit to multiple situations instead of just one specifically. Granted, it does fit to that situation specifically a little bit better than the incendiary grenade, but the incendiary grenade is still better in my opinion. And the same kind of goes for the thermite grenade, although it's a little more specialized towards ads, so like big groups of enemies basically. It's essentially just a 90-degree rotated version of the void wall, but instead of just being a constant wave of force, it sends one at a time, like one wave at a time, instead of just being constant, like a constant wall. So thermite grenade's really not all that useful. It's like basically for groups of thrall or occasionally a group of acolyte, but at that point you can just use the incendiary grenade and still clear that same group. So alright, let's move on to lifts now. We have, I used increased height, but let's see here, we've got increased height, upgrade control, and catapult. Now, I went with the lift increase height because, you know, Titans just generally have a low agility. Granted, you don't have to play it that way, but that's the way that I think it should be played, is with the low agility, high armor, and high recovery. And I'll get more to that later. So, to make up for that loss of agility, which increases your jump height, you know, use the increased height just so you can jump higher. I'm not going to get too into the jumps or the lifts because they're really not that important. Just go with whatever works for your playstyle. Alright, moving on to the Hammer of Soul here. We have Forge Master, Sun Charge, and Scorched Earth. The reason I went Forge Master is an obvious reason. It's more hammers. I mean, who wouldn't want more hammers for a Hammer of Soul? And the hammers also cause bigger explosions, so ads, like you can walk into any room and just clear them all out with one super most of the time. So I mean, basically just it's kind of like a thing where would you rather have extra ammo or would you rather have a wider spread on your shots? And for me personally, I always go more ammo. So I can do so many more things with that more ammo instead of just having a more spread. So in my opinion, having more hammers and the bigger explosion, which actually in its own way is a bigger spread, is a lot better. So, and being able to shoulder charge through enemies is really not that big of a deal. But anyways, moving on to the Sunstrike here, we have Melting Point, Thermal Vent, and Stoke the Forge. The reason I went Melting Point is because, once again, the Sunbreaker, I wanted to design this to be versatile to where you can fight both ads and bosses with relative ease. So Melting Point is basically for your bosses. You just walk up, punch them back up, let your fire team just wail on them. It's basically a shortened version of the Shadow Shot. But it also doesn't hit multiple enemies, it's just for one target. But it's still very, very useful against bosses because it just makes them take more damage. So, and it's even good for majors. Like if you're fighting a major captain, those things can get really annoying, especially if you don't have any form of arc damage. So just run up, Melting Point, and just start wailing away. And the other two, honestly, I don't mind the Sunspot too much, the Thermal Vent, but I just don't feel that it's useful, like, or as useful anyways. Being able to get that solar explosion, yeah, it's an explosion, but it's a very, very small one. It has a very small radius and doesn't really affect much area. And creating a Sunspot on kills, it really doesn't happen as often as you would think, unless you're only using your melee against ads. And as for the last one, Stoke the Forge, I mean, I can see reducing the Sunstrike cooldown being useful, but getting a killing blow with it, just have it instantly recharge it. At that point, you might as well just, you know, you don't even need the melee at that point. If you're instant killing with melees, you don't even need the solar aspect of it. So, I mean, I can see that being nice, so where you can just go through ads and not have to worry about losing your melee, and then when you get to the boss, you can just punch him and land him on fire. But having the melting point is so much better. Just use your weapons to clear out the ads or your grenades and stuff like that. That's what the incendiary grenade is for, clearing out ads. And if you have the right weapons, you know, it's the right loadout, it's really easy enough to do that. So you don't need Stoke the Forge to clear ads at all. So just save your melee for the bosses or any majors that might be a nuisance. So anyways, moving on to our first set of Titan Codexes here. We've got Titan Codex 1, 2, and 3. The reason I went for Titan Codex 1 is because, once again, in my mind, Titans are designed to be tanks, which means maximum armor and maximum recovery and low agility. Because it's obvious by looking at a Titan that they have a really big build that they're meant to take a shot. With all of their abilities, they're usually within close proximity of their enemies. So being able to have that extra armor and recovery to back you up is definitely very, very useful. Agility is not very necessary for a Titan. As long as you can get to where you need to go, then you really don't need to worry about upping that agility. Alright, so moving on here, we've got our first little perk over here. We've got Flame Seeker, Explosive Pyre, and Fleet Fire. The reason I went Explosive Pyre is because it works great. Like, it's just amazing against ads. Being able to throw down one hammer and potentially kill around 4 to 5 enemies with just one, I mean, good God, that's amazing. And even if you don't necessarily kill all of them, if you just kill like 2 or 3 and then those explode and deal damage to others, that's still an amazing bonus. And this works really well again with Forge Master, since it has that increased explosion radius, so it can hit a wider area of enemies and have more potential to cause explosions and just have this huge chain reaction caused by maybe 1 or 2 hammers. It's just, you can literally clear out a room no problem as long as you know where to throw your hammers. Now, I mean, I can easily see using Flame Seeker for some people. If you're not very good at throwing your hammers, you don't feel you're very accurate, that's fine. I mean, I almost think the Flame Seeker is a little more designed for PvP and boss fights, because when you're using it against ads, Flame Seeker is really not that useful at all, since the hammers, you know, they have an explosion, they have an area of effect. So being able to, or like having it alter its flight path, seek out your enemies, that's what I would switch to if I were in PvP. Honestly, I wouldn't use Explosive Pyre if I were in PvP. This is basically more designed for PvE. Still can be used in Crucible, but not as well. You'd have to make a few tweaks. So just be aware of that. That's how I decided it, because that's all I play for the most part is PvE. But yeah, and then Fleet Fire, I don't use because, once again, Titans are not agility. So getting that bonus agility really doesn't mean too much, and only having it stacked 3 times, I don't think it really grants that big of a bonus anyways. So just go with Explosive Pyre to be able to clear out rooms, especially because if you're in a boss fight that has a bunch of ads surrounding him, and you use your hammer or soul to kill the ads, they can explode and still deal damage to the boss. So you're getting like a win-win situation right there of being able to clear out ads and simultaneously do damage to the boss. Anyways, moving on to our last 3 Titan Codexes here. We've got Titan Codex 4, Titan Codex 5, and Titan Codex 6. I went with Maximum Recovery because, from what I've seen from solo classes, regeneration is kind of the main stat for all of the solar subclasses. And it makes sense, because if you really think about it, you know, realistically, if you have a bleeding wound and you can use fire to seal it really quick, you know, cauterizing it, which is what the last perk is here. I'll get that in a minute. So it basically accelerates you, so you can regen faster. So, and the armor is still really nice to have, but I wanted to make the armor and recovery about balanced, and this was the closest way that I found to being able to do that, is having Titan Codex 5. So anyways, moving on to our last set of perks, we have Simmering Flames, Cauterize, and last of all, Firekeeper. The reason I went Cauterize is because, once again, Titan, you are a tank. If you're a Titan, you are essentially the tank of the group. So being able to immediately heal as soon as you kill an enemy is just so amazing. And it doesn't even have to be with your Hammer of Soul. It can be with an Incendiary Grenade, it can be with your melee, just anything. Anything that's brought down by one of your subclass abilities will regenerate your health. And now, I guess Simmering Flames can still be really useful, but I tend to use my super a lot more than I do my grenade and melee. My grenade and melee are just there to support, grenades to take out some of the adds, or maybe deal some burning damage to the boss, and then of course Melting Point to make the bosses deal more damage. So at that point I would run in, Melting Point the boss, Hammer of Soul immediately, and just start hammering away at him. So being able to have that cauterize, so if you ever get low on health in the middle of your super, you just throw a Hammer of Soul with some adds, and boom, you got some health back. Or you can even just go melee an enemy or toss in a grenade to a group of adds. You're like a really, really good tank once you can accomplish that. So, and then, of course, for the Firekeeper, that's not really that big of a deal, especially with the way that I designed this. You're not going to get any sunspots with the way that I built this. So being able to gain an overshield and have Hammer of Soul last longer while in a sunspot is going to be useless, since, I can't create one with the way I built this. I honestly feel that sunspots are really not as good as they're made out to be. They're a little underpowered, in my opinion. Granted, they can be pretty ridiculous if you know how to use them, but it does take a little more skill, in my mind, to be able to actually pull that off and make it really, really useful. So I stick to Cauterize, so you can just clear out rooms like no problem. You can literally have your fire just be like, alright, everybody stay back, I'm going to run in this room and kill everything. You literally, as soon as you launch that super, that room is gone. Alright, but anyways guys, that's it for this character guide. Be sure to leave suggestions for the next one down in the comments. I'll be sure to look them up. I'm most likely going to be doing a Hunter next time, because I'd like to cycle through and make sure I'm not doing the same class twice in a row. But yeah, anyways guys, that's it for this video. Let's go for 10 likes on this video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video whenever that is. Peace out.